Please welcome Steven Erlanger, Chief Diplomatic Correspondent Europe, The New York Times, in conversation with His Excellency Mr. Borut, Pahor, President, Republic of Slovenia.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very, very much. It's always hard after lunch to pull people back into the room, but those of you here, I think, are in for a treat. We have for a conversation Borut Pahor, who's the president of Slovenia, who was actually even re-elected as president of Slovenia. He's been president since December of 2012. But he was also Prime Minister of Slovenia from 2008 to 2012, and before that spent, I think, 4 years in Brussels as a member of the European Parliament. So you also probably have the copy of the International New York Times today, which has been distributed. And in that is quite a wonderful section, which I urge you all to read, called World Review, with a very good essay by the President.
Thank you.
As a critical friend of the European Union, a supporter, but someone who sees real problems ahead. So I think maybe that's where we should start our conversation.
Okay.
You know Brussels, you're a member, you care. Where's it going wrong?
Well, I think we have to go now both ways, being pragmatic, and also we have to have a vision. So definitely we have to go both ways. Being pragmatic, I would call to solve two important issues, Brexit and illegal migration. Mm-hmm. Being visionary, I am of the opinion that it's time to think once again to hold a convention on the future of Europe. This is a very brave, bold move, but I think it's time to do it.
The last one didn't go very well.
No. You've mentioned I've been member of European Parliament, I've been member of Constitutional Commission, I've observed the whole process, and I think we can get something out of this experience. But I would like to convey this message to you that nevertheless we are facing tremendous, a number of problems and issues ahead of us. I think we should not underestimate our, debate on the future of Europe. And I think if there would be some sort of, imagination of this future, I think would be better than, would be helpful to solve pragmatic issues. And there is a lack of this at this very moment.
Yeah, because what we get from, I'm going to be a little unfair here, from Emmanuel Macron, who is a man who loves to talk almost as much as Fidel Castro used to love to talk. He's very loquacious, he's full of big ideas. Do you think he is expressing part of where Europe needs to go? Because he tends to be annoying many members of this bloc that he needs if he wants to get something done.
Well, let me put it this way. I think everybody who is supporting some sort of renaissance of European Union is welcome to me. So I will list President Macron among those. Thank you.
Good.
I've talked to him just recently, so yes, I think that now it's not the problem with those leaders who are talking the future of Europe, but with those who are not talking the future of Europe.
I mean, what are the particular...
Nevertheless, we have many differences.
Sure.
Somebody would maybe know that I'm federalist. My personal view is very, very strong on this. I know this is, long way to go, but when thinking the future of Europe, I think that basically at the end of the road, it is a federal Europe, which is, which constitutes some problem to my country, which is a small country. Inviting me to answer the question, what about the power of small country in federal Europe? It's not so easy, but at the end of the day, I think if the Europe would be stronger, not so weak as it is at the moment, everybody would have something of it. Also, small countries. That is why I do not feel that federal Europe is against the interest of my country. I think it will be in the interest of my country, but not now at this very moment.
Right.
At this very moment, I think it's not.
Do you think when Britain leaves, you will lose an ally, or will it be easier to move ahead once Britain goes?
Well, let me say one thing. What I am observing there is a complete split in society. So, basically, it is the same way to go one or the other way. Both way at the moment are wrong because of this huge split gap in the society. And this really concerns me. This really concerns me because I don't think it is a question of, elections or new referendum. It is basically about the split in a society. Half of a nation is in favor, half of a nation is against. And what I would like to see is some development. I would like to see, this is my wish, Brexit would happen on the basis of good deal.
Yeah.
And then I wouldn't like to see this issue to go on because could, damage the consensus among 27. I think 27 now, are called to come together and, solve some pragmatical issues and then to make some visionary remarks.
Because, Brexit gets in the way, right?
At the moment, yes.
You've got the budget
I'm
to
so
worry
sorry.
about, you've got all these other things
It is the
to worry
sovereign
about.
decision by the British people.
Right.
We cannot comment. We should accept it. But the way it is, going on represents some sort of challenge to European Union, because what I wouldn't like to see is to open the Pandora box on new compromises, which at the end of the day would not have a support of all 27 countries. That would mean the crisis of EU. We should be very
It was
prudent.
interesting to me because as soon as the vote happened, which was now 3 years ago, if you can believe it, right? Brussels panicked, right? Tusk was worried about everybody leaving, and they had this emergency summit in Bratislava, and they were all in a panic, right? Juncker, I think, began to say, as he often does, have a drink and calm down, right? But suddenly, after 3 years, Brexit has turned from an infection into a vaccine. It's almost prevented others in the European Union from wanting to push and leave. This
is correct.
Yeah.
I think, there is evidence of this. After Brexit, those forces in some countries that before that have been very keen on exit the Union suddenly disappear. And there is election. EU is much more than just a project. It's the most beautiful thing that happened to nations in Europe. So we have to go on with this in spite of all problems, because this is the only solution for peace and stability. And exiting European Union is and will be always very difficult thing, and I'm not sure that Britain will gain something, but it's their
Decision.
job to go.
But part of the problem is, the EU, the negotiators, Barnier and so on, they were patting themselves on the back. We've got this deal, we've defended our interests, we've defended the single market. But it's a failure. Unless you get a withdrawal agreement, it's a failure on both sides, is it not?
Yes, I think yes. Yeah. Just a couple of hours ago, I had a meeting with President of the Republic of Ireland, and I said it to this basic question at the moment. It is feasible a new compromise on Irish backstop. Well, my answer is whatever is good for Ireland is good for Slovenia, yes. But I have some problems to see if there is really a maneuvering space for any compromise whatsoever. I think we've done a very good job with Prime Minister May, and it's up to British Parliament now to decide, but I've been so sorry that decided the way to reject it. I think was a fair compromise.
Yeah. Well, that's a complicated topic, God knows. I wanted to ask you, I remember the former Yugoslavia. In 1981, I sat with Milovan Žilas in his
Excellent
living room.
Guy.
Right?
Excellent guy.
I'm not a Yugo nostalgic, but talk about this enormous transition. What were the biggest challenges? Now, you're small, and you got out early, and you got out without bloodshed, right? But you watched it, and it was part of you.
Well, let me say one thing. Next year, we will celebrate 30th anniversary of a plebiscite on independence. Now, can you imagine, sir, that my country, my nation, would be split on this question, to be independent or not to be independent? We have been united. This is a beautiful story about Slovenia out of this, So this is maybe the biggest difference between Slovenia and Great Britain at the moment. We, at that time, 30 years ago, back in 1990, 1991, we have faced enormous problems, also with international community. You do recognize that at that time, international community has not been very much in favor of our independence. But because of our unity, we've gone through all problems, and at the end of the day, we now have a success story. On the other side, we have this British experience, divided society, basically on the same issue, independence. But because the British nation is divided, basically the government cannot do the wrong thing. So this is the biggest difference I am observing at the moment, and I am so thankful to destiny that we succeeded to be united at the most important moment in our history.
And the hardest part probably is staying united afterwards.
Absolutely.
Because it's very easy to say, yes, let's all be free, but it's harder afterwards.
But this has, the idea of independence has been very much in context of European idea. We didn't want to go out of former Yugoslavia to be isolated. We wanted to go out of Yugoslavia to be united with other democratic European nations. This is a completely different approach. So European Union is of biggest importance for the future of my country.
How do you feel about...
we can survive without it, but would be difficult and would be, I cannot even imagine it.
Have you had the same problem of emigration that Bulgaria and Romania have had? Have you had a loss of skilled young people to go to other parts of the European Union?
We have, as some other countries, yes, this kind of problem, but not
in that degree.
No.
Do you have any?
Basically, some of them are coming back to Slovenia
Well, this
because
is right.
the whole environment, is, first of all, security is there. I mean, if somebody is mentioning Slovenia, security would be number one. Then also this environment of thinking out of the box, all that stuff which is needed for, to go on with it, it's there. I'm not saying that it's the ideal
but I mean,
case, but it's moving.
As things
it's
get,
moving
people
ahead.
are coming back to Poland, they're coming back right. Do you have advice for Kosovo right now? I mean, do you think these discussions about land swaps go anywhere, or do they open up lots of trouble?
Listen, I've been very much in favor of the dialogue between Pristina and Belgrade. I've been at the same day, at the same place when Taci and Vucic have decided to go on this a little bit out of the box.
Right.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And nevertheless, some of my colleagues across Europe have, rejected this idea. I've supported it, not because I would feel it's completely okay, but it is an idea of a dialogue. It is an idea of searching some sort of compromise solution to this very sensitive issue. So that is why I'm supporting Vucic and Taci. I hope the new government, under new leadership, will go with this.
Yeah, right.
But I'm a little bit concerned that political forces in Kosovo, also due to this enlargement fatigue by Brussels, will more and more think about getting together with Albania, and this could provoke some problems in the region.
This is the Alban Kurti problem, right, to some degree?
I cannot comment further. But, listen, I am co-chairman of this Brdo Briuni initiative, so every year, once at least, we are leaders, presidents of all countries, from Slovenia to Albania. We are coming together and debating things. And I think it is important to keep the dialogue, but if there will be a lack of political push from Brussels, there will be no energy for reforms in countries across the region. I think step by step they will think different way how to go to the future, and that could cause some problems. So my political, obligation at the moment is having excellent relations with everybody in the region. So this is the privilege of Slovenia.
It's
that
a good
we
thing
have
for small
excellent
countries.
relations with everybody. So we can be critical a little bit with Kosovo because we are supporting Kosovo. We can be a little bit critical about Serbia because I'm a good friend to Vucic and everybody else. So that is why I am saying to all of them, listen, if Brussels will not put the enlargement process at the top of the agenda, and will not, then we have to think a little bit how to solve problems by our own political will to avoid any kind of instability in the region.
You recognize the independence of Kosovo, right?
Yes, absolutely.
What about the Western Balkans? When I think, there's this great hole in the middle of the European Union, right? This sort of vacuum. And nobody seems very interested in doing much about it. I mean, there's lots of talk about, oh yes, we love the Western Balkans, and yes, their future's with Europe. Do you see this commission actually moving ahead? I mean, obviously North Macedonia, let's call it that, has been ready for quite a while, hasn't it? For accession talks at least to start?
Well, everybody could have different approaches to this. My is as follows. There is 15 million people, so the absorption capacity of EU is not troubling. This is not Turkey, it's not Ukraine, it's not some big countries. It's all together, basically, we are talking about 15 million people. I do think, and this is my message to you, ladies and gentlemen, I am sure out of my 30 years of experience being there. Yes, we are facing a lot of problems in the region, from unsolved border issues to reconciliation and so on. But in case EU would enlarge to this part, even if this part of Europe would not be perfect as should be, the cost, the political cost of this decision will be much more lower than to neglect this region and then, paying attention when will be too late.
Yeah, no, because
I think
there's a lot of meddling going
right.
on. But this is the same time, this is a Romania and a Bulgaria who are still not in Schengen 11 years after they were told that they were ready for Schengen.
Listen, maybe the story about Western Balkans is, in a way, very similar to Romania and Bulgaria. I do remember when we voted back in House in Brussels on the membership of these two countries. And somebody would say, well, they are not prepared enough. And, well, if we would miss at that time to vote in favor of the full membership, geopolitical situation would be today completely different than it is. So it was a brave and good move by Brussels to invite both countries to the full membership. If not, Russia will definitely, I think, would behave a little bit different than it used to in last 15 years.
Right.
So that is why I'm saying now it is basically the same thing with the Western Balkans. Now you are mentioning Schengen. Mm-hmm. Well, Schengen is important because it provides free movement, and with this illegal migration, it allows us also to make borders on the outside of Schengen countries, not within them.
It did seem rather silly to think you could have internal freedom of movement without external borders.
Yes. Well, this is an illustration of the lack of political will of member countries to solve this migration issue. I said it at the very beginning that there are two issues at this very moment to be pragmatically solved: Brexit and illegal migration. This second one will be even more difficult for 27 countries because there are many different opinions on how to be solved, but we have to manage it. Listen, I used to be the member of European Council in time of financial crisis. It has been very difficult, but at the end of the day, we succeeded. And Europe has gone out of the financial and economic crisis. And now we are debating this illegal migration for a couple of years, and we are not able to solve it. I think it's time to sit down and try to get a solution. And probably at the end of the day, there will be no solution. What is the recipe? To sit next day down and search once again.
For a solution.
Absolutely.
Just a quick question before I ask you more about migration. Do you favor Croatia entering Schengen, or do you still have border problems with them?
Well, I think it's important that also Croatia, as everybody else, would meet the criteria. This is my answer to this.
Right. Which is not an answer.
Well,
okay.
No, listen, I've signed the agreement that basically allowed Croatia to continue with the negotiation on full membership in EU. I've signed it November 4th in Stockholm with Prime Minister Kosovo. So I am not the guy who would, speak against Croatia. I'm the guy who tried to get out of the problem that blocked. So I would like Croatia to fulfill the criteria, that Slovenia and everybody else would be certain that Croatia is capable to maintain order and discipline on the border, also because of illegal migration.
Right. So on illegal migration, Slovenia hasn't been a place where people stay. I mean, if anything, you've been kind of a transit country, right? So why is it such an issue for you?
Well, listen, back in 2015, I think,
Yeah.
500,000.
You know, it came through.
Well, come on.
On the way to Austria and on the way to
Come on.
Germany.
500,000 people.
Yeah,
Slovenia is the country of 2 million.
I know.
Oh, come on. 1/4 of population is moving through your country. It is an issue.
Sure, sure. But it's not an issue now, is it?
It's not an issue now, and we would like to maintain this. We are keen to work with Croatia, with the countries in the region, as we used to. Down there to Macedonia. Let me tell you something. Nobody is excluded among 27 or 28 from this important issue, which is not just, political issue. It's also moral issue and has, a lot of angles. So it is so important to find out a common approach to the solution. The situation when each country is invited to search for its own solutions is the wrong, way to go.
Yeah.
So that is why I'm saying let us talk and debate and see differences, but let us try to get some sort of consensus at the
Let's
the
see
end of the day.
if we have some questions out in the audience while people think about that. There's no common asylum policy, right, in the EU. I mean, there are all these things that need to
This
be...
Dublin Agreement has failed. It seems new circumstances requires completely new approach. A week ago, I've been a guest of V4, so Visegrad 4.
Yes.
And once again, I could see, completely, complete negative approach to have some common solution to this problem. So
part of the problem with the Visegrad 4 is it agrees on one thing,
right,
which is keeping out migrants.
Right,
Other than that, it's kind of divided. Do we have questions? Sir, I see a question here. I don't know if a mic just sort of stand up and tell us. If possible, a mic, right? This gentleman on the left, right there. Thank you so much.
Hello. So my question is...
Identify yourself.
So I'm Christos Gavalas from CNN Greece. Would you mind telling us your opinion on Turkey's invasion to Syria, and how does this, how is this linked with its membership candidacy to the European Union?
Okay. Do you want to answer?
Well, I should said it at the beginning. My statements reflect my own position on all issues. Does not reflect necessarily the position of the government. So, listen. For years, I have been saying to everybody, also to President Erdogan, that the main issue is the Kurdish issue. And now it is obvious that this is the case. When EU, have been negotiating with Turkey, I've often said, pay attention to Kurdish issue. Let us be honest with Turkey, with President Erdogan. I know for him this is the issue, should be also for us. We could not, lead us in a position where we wouldn't be, without a firm statement on the secure position of this minority as far as Turkey is concerned, or northern Iraq at the moment, so Syria at the moment. So I would like to see this problem will be solved by peaceful way, definitely. No use of force. Okay? This is my answer to your question. I mean, we are living in a world which is less predictable, less safe, as it used to be. So it is so important not to start another security problem. So I would like to see President Erdogan in Turkey to react in a peaceful way, not using force. Was my answer good enough? Or okay, thank you.
Okay. Is there one more question, gentlemen? You've got the microphone.
Hi, my name is John Vlasto from an NGO called Democracy Without Borders. My question is, if you believe a federal Europe is the long-term solution to the problems of Europe, what do you think of a federal world as a solution to the long-term problems facing the world, such as sustainability?
Listen, this political and architecture of modern world has some problems. Nevertheless, I do believe in implementing the rule of law. We should change some, rules, but let us go with them. So multilateralism is something good. It's something good. And it is obvious I'm saying this as a president of a small country. It is extremely important for us to be safe. So yes, I am very pro-multilateralism, and I am concerned about some political processes going out there that are jeopardizing this process.
So I'm going to ask you one last question, because we're running out of time. When you look at the United States these days, big defender of NATO, do you worry that the Americans are pulling back from their traditional role? And does it leave countries like yours more vulnerable? Or do you think this is not really a serious problem?
Well, let us be honest. Sometimes we severely criticize the United States to behave like a, world policeman. And now we are criticizing them being quite opposite. So for me, it is important U.S. would have a fair share of, political burden. And I would like to see U.S. as the country which is important for the peace and stability in the world.
But Europe could do more in its own defense?
You mean Slovenia?
No, well, I mean the European Union, for instance.
Oh, yes. Gentlemen said that, yes, I've started by saying that I'm federalist in long term. That requires also a common defense strategy. And I mean, EU is doing fine now when it is debating this common defense strategy, but at the same time, NATO members are obliged to fulfill obligations from this point of view. So at the moment, I think we are doing a good job. NATO is important. I hope we'll be there for some time.
Me too.
And it is, I mean, because of some problems, we should not kill the project,
Right.
Okay.
Right. President Pahor, thank you.
Thank you so
very
much.
And
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.